Chapter 3 of Shrimadbhaagavatha, the previous birth of Narada. Om Shri Bhagavate Vasudevaya. They were sitting silent for a while. The only sound was the music made by the waves of Saraswati as she flowed, and the hypnotic drone of the veena strings which Narada was plucking incessantly. Suddenly he smiled at Vyasa and said, "You will be interested to know how I was saved from the bondage of karma because of Narayana. You may not be aware of my previous birth." There was a look of amazement on the face of Vyasa. He said, "Previous birth? But my friend, you are the son of Brahma. How could you have had a previous birth? You have kindled my curiosity. Please tell me all about it." "I am talking of the previous kalpa," said Narada with a reminiscent look on his eyes. "There was a Shudra woman who was working in the ashrama of the rishis. I was her only son. Once, during the rainy season, a group of sages came to the ashrama where my mother was a servant. They were to spend the 4 months there. I was a youngster of 5, and to me, my mother assigned the duty of attending to their wants. I served them all the time. I was a peculiar child. I was not like the others. I was not fond of childish pranks and games, and I was quiet and not given to much talking. Even the words I spoke were indecent. Even the words I spoke were indistinct since I was still a child. The sages who were there became quite fond of me. They took pity on me and let me stay with them all the time. They were sorry for me, I think, and they let me stay with them all the time. Once, while washing the vessels out of which they had eaten, I happened to eat what was left, and that made my mind pure. I was rid of all sins. Such is the power of the devotees of the Lord. These bhaktas would spend all their time singing the praises of Narayana, and I became engrossed in the stories which they recounted, and I became enamored of Narayana. The songs which spoke the greatness of him made me think of him, and to me nothing else seemed to matter. Day and night I was thinking only of him. I came to realize that I was something beyond Maya, the illusion that the body is real. I had learned so much all because of the Hari Kirtana which I was hearing constantly. The Rajoguna and the Tamoguna which were in my mind were all washed away, and in the meantime the 4 months came to an end and the sages were ready to depart. They looked on me who was standing there with tears flowing from my eyes. They knew that I was a fit disciple, and in their infinite kindness, they taught me the secret of realizing the truth. They taught me that dedication of all one's actions to the Brahman would cure one of the tapatrayas, Adhyatmika, Adi Dhaivika, and Adi Bhautika. Action which is performed in the world with a desire for returns involves man further in the coils of Maya. These same actions, however, when performed without any desire, with a dedicated frame of mind, will only hasten to break the bonds of Maya. Knowledge of the Brahman wedded to the path of devotion will help man to perform actions dedicated to the Lord. Soon, very soon, the conditioned Atman will find freedom from the coils and become one with the infinite. That was the lesson they taught me. Strangely enough, the technique was quite simple. Men who perform action with the thought of the Lord in their minds will naturally think on him all the time. If the action is performed with the words, "Salutations to you, Lord of Lords, I worship you, calling you by the names Vasudeva, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Sankarshana," that will be the path to moksha, freedom from the bondage of karma. This was the great lesson taught to me by the sages. The Lord was compassionate, and he instilled in my mind the thought that he was the one truth and that all the rest was illusion. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 4 of Shrimadbhaagavatha, The Search After Truth. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sage Narada continued. The sages went away and I was left alone. I had a mother, as I told you before. She was a servant. She was ignorant and she was immensely attached to me, her only child. I knew how foolish it was to love like that, but it was not possible for me to leave her and go away. I was with her in the ashrama where she worked and waited for the grace of God. The world, my friend, is under the sway of God and His ways are inscrutable. We see what is happening, but we lose sight of the fact that something else is responsible for the happenings in this world. We see what is happening, but we lose sight of the fact that something else is responsible for the happenings in this world. The action of man are like those of a puppet. It seems to move on its own accord, but it is not so. It has to move the way the strings are pulled, and the strings are pulled by an expert who is not seen by us. One night, my mother was proceeding towards the cowshed to milk the cow belonging to the ashrama. It was twilight, and even that little light was fading rapidly. My poor mother was bitten by a snake which was lying in her path, and she died on the spot. Strangely enough, I did not feel too unhappy, since I knew that this was the Lord's doing, that He had so engineered it that I would get my freedom. My mother was a bandha, and I was now free of it. I left the ashrama and proceeded towards the north. I travelled through many countries and many forests. I crossed rivers which were beautiful. The forests were full of flowering trees which had their branches broken by wild elephants. I saw the mountains gleaming golden and silvery because of the minerals which were hidden in the rocks. I saw lakes which were noisy with the sounds of bees, which were murmuring all the while. I passed fearful bamboo forests, and to my ears came the noise made by the roaring of wild animals, the howling of jackals, and the mournful hooting of the night owls. I was exhausted and my limbs were aching. My throat was parched and I was hungry. I went towards the river, washed myself, and drank my fill of the sweet water. I then sat under an immense pupil tree. I assumed the posture which the sages had taught me and concentrated my mind on the form of the Lord which they had described. I sat there absorbed in meditation. In my mind's eye, I saw the form of Narayana slowly taking shape. I saw him and my body trembled in ecstasy. Tears flowed incessantly and my entire being was flooded with joy. A moment of this ecstasy and the form of Narayana vanished. It was there no more. I was plunged in misery and I was roused from my meditation. I tried again to sit and meditate and I could not concentrate. The form would not come back to my mind. I was like one demented. All on a sudden I heard a voice speak to me. He was calling me and his voice was loving, comforting, beautiful. He said, "My child, you will not be able to see me again in this birth of yours. Unless and until you shed this form born of desires, you cannot reach me. This momentary vision of my form was to assure you that you will reach me in the end. Having seen me once, no one can think of anything else or have any other desire in his mind. Even at this young age, you have, by your association with sages, learned to love me and only me. Love for me will banish all other forms of love in your mind. Shed this body of yours and come to me. You will always be by my side. This love you have for me will not wane even after the pralaya. You are dear to me." The divine voice was heard no more. Since then I spent all my time singing the praises of Narayana and went from place to place. I had no desires and I was content with my lot in life. I was waiting for the time when I could shed the human form which kept me in bondage, kept me prisoner. Days passed. Years too, many of them. In course of time, death came to me. It was a streak of lightning deceptively like a garland of light. The body made up of the elements fell to the earth, and I travelled towards the ocean where Narayana was sleeping. I entered into Brahma along with his breath. After 4 yugas had passed, when Brahma began to create the world, I was born as his son along with Marichi and the others. By the grace of the Lord, I travel all over the universe singing his glories. The Devas gave me this veena by name Mahati, and with this to accompany my songs, I go about spreading the lesson of love. When I sing, the form of Narayana comes to my mind at once as though he has been summoned by me. I see him all the time and I am always happy. Let me repeat what I said before: Karma Yoga, which you have taught in the Mahabharata, Jnana Yoga, which you have taught in the Upanishad, and the Karma Khanda you have described in the Vedas. Not one of them will grant man so easily the peace and tranquility which Bhakti Yoga gives. So, dear friend, let your composition be the raft which will save men floundering in the ocean of pain, frustration, and despair. Narada went away from the presence of Vyasa. Long after he had gone, the drone of his veena could be heard, and the great poet sat for a while pondering on the words of Narada. Vyasa closed his eyes and went into a deep trance. He saw in his mind's eye the great events of the past. He saw Narayana resting on Ananta. He saw the beginning of creation, the Virata Purusha and the great lotus out of which was born Brahma. He saw the birth of the worlds. He saw the Vibhuti of the word of the Lord and the happenings during the many kalpas. Vyasa then composed the great Bhagavata Purana. He taught this great poem to his son Shuka, and Shuka propagated it in the world of man. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 5 of Shrimadbhaagavatam, the end which was the beginning. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It was the last day of the great war on the field of Kurukshetra. The sun had set long ago. Near Samanta Panchaka lay the Kaurava monarch Duryodhana with his thigh broken by Bhima. He was dying, and to his presence came Ashwatthama, the son of Drona. His anger knew no bounds when he saw how unjustly the king had been hit. Ashwatthama took an oath that he would avenge the killing of his king by destroying all the Pandavas. The entire Kaurava army had been annihilated. Only 3 were alive. Barring the dying king, they were Kripa, Kritavarma, the son of Hardika, and Ashwatthama. That night, when everyone was asleep, Ashwatthama hurried to the Pandava camp. He did not find the Pandavas, but their 5 sons were there sleeping. Drishtadyumna and his brothers were in the camp too. The angry Brahmin killed all of them, the 5 sons of Draupadi and all her brothers. He then set fire to the camp and went away. The king, when he was told about it, was not happy. The act of his friend was too terrible. Early in the morning, the news reached the Pandavas. Draupadi was horror-stricken. In one night, she had lost her sons and her brothers. She saw their dead forms, and her voice was harsh with pain as she lamented their death. Seeing her tear-stained face and anguished eyes, Arjuna tried to comfort her. He said, "My queen, you will not weep for long. I will avenge the death of the children. I will bring the head of that sinner and lay it at your feet. He will not be able to escape me and the arrows from my dread Gandiva. I will seek him out and kill him." Arjuna hurried to his chariot, and Krishna was once again his charioteer. They saw Ashwatthama running fast to escape from Arjuna. Seeing the angry cloud on Arjuna's brow, the son of Drona tried to run as fast as he could. But Arjuna was like an avenging fury, and Ashwatthama could do nothing. His horses were not fast enough to carry him away from the spot. In despair, he thought of saving his life by using the great astra, Brahma Shirsha. He touched water, and after invoking the astra, he spoke the words, let the world be Pandava-less, and sent it towards Arjuna. The skies were filled with the glow and heat of the astra. A fear came over Arjuna, and he said, Krishna, Krishna, what is happening? Why is my frame burning so? I feel that a dreadful fire is traveling towards me, and I do not know what it is, nor can I find a way of escaping its fury. Tell me what I should do. With a grim look, Krishna said, Arjuna, the son of your guru has thought fit to hurl the great Brahma Shirsha at you. Do not look horrified. I note that Drona has told you how terrible it is, and I dare say he has told the same to his son also. But Ashwatthama evidently has not thought of the consequences of this dastardly action. Apparently he desires to destroy the entire world. Make up your mind soon, Arjuna, and invoke the same astra. This is the only way you can quench the fury of this approaching fire. Arjuna saluted the presiding deity of the astra and invoked it. When the two fires were traveling towards each other, it seemed like the end of the world had come. The rishis from the heavens hurried towards the spot, and they said, Withdraw the astra, both of you, or else the world will be destroyed. The two fires should not meet. Hurry and avert the calamity. Arjuna obeyed them immediately and withdrew his astra. Ashwatthama could not. When he learned the invocation from his father, he had been warned about the dreadful power of the astra. Not bothering to remember the warning, he had sent it against Arjuna. The sins he had committed had robbed him of his purity and his Brahminic tejas, and he was powerless against his own astra. Lest it should consume him, he aimed it at all the unborn children of the Pandavas, and thus thought of making the world Pandava-less. After withdrawing the astra, Arjuna rushed towards Ashwatthama. Tying him up with a rope, Arjuna dragged him like a cow meant for sacrifice. Krishna's eyes were spitting fire. He said, Arjuna, this is the man who has committed the gravest of sins, killing of children while they were asleep. It is not right that you should have mercy on him. You must kill him without a qualm. I do not have to remind you of the rules of fighting. A man well versed in them will not kill an enemy who is drunk, who is careless about his safety, who has lost his wits, who is not trying to fight back, who is sleeping, who has fallen at your feet asking for mercy, who is defeated and who is frightened. But the sinner who saves himself by killing ruthlessly thousands of other lives must be punished only by death. And again, Arjuna, have you forgotten your promise so soon? I was listening when you told Draupadi, I will lay at your feet the head of that man who killed your son. You swore to do it. Why do you delay? Kill this man. Arjuna would not do so. In spite of the great provocation, he remembered that Ashwatthama was his playmate of old, that he was the son of his guru. Drona had loved Arjuna even more than he loved Ashwatthama. Arjuna was unwilling to kill the son of his guru, who was like a brother to him. He took him to the presence of Draupadi and the other Pandavas. He said, Look, my queen, look on this sinner who is standing before you. His eyes are bent on the ground since he dare not look at you in the face. Tell me what I should do with him, and I will do it. Draupadi's grief at the loss of her children would ever be fresh in her mind. Also the fact that Ashwatthama killed them. But her anger had abated. She was overcome with compassion for him, and she said, Arjuna, please release him at once from these coils. I cannot bear to see the son of your guru bound like this. Drona was the guru who taught you archery, and his son is a brother to you. That pious woman, Kripi, has not joined her lord on the funeral fire because her son is alive. If you kill him now, she will suffer the pain of losing her only child. I do not want her to suffer like me. Let him go his way. Please release Ashwatthama. Yudhishthira, Arjuna, as well as the twins were pleased with the words of their queen. Bhima was the only one whose anger had not evaporated at the sight of Ashwatthama. He was for killing him. Krishna smiled and said, Arjuna, you are caught on the horns of a dilemma. Either you displease Draupadi and others, killing Ashwatthama, or you incur the wrath of your beloved brother Bhima by letting this sinner live. Do what you think is fit under the circumstances. Try and see how you can please all of them. Arjuna looked at all of them. Krishna was standing with his arms locked together across his chest, and there was an inscrutable expression on his face. Yudhishthira and others were looking sad and uncomfortable. Bhima was glowering angrily at the prisoner. After a long moment, Arjuna thought that he understood what Krishna was trying to tell him. He took up his sword and cut off the jewel on the head of Ashwatthama. Stripped of the glow of the jewel which had been part of him, stripped of his Brahmanic tejas, impure because of Shishuhatya, Ashwatthama stood in their midst. Arjuna undid the ropes which bound him and said, Now you can go. Cutting off the hair of a Brahmin, taking away the wealth that belongs to him and ordering him to leave your presence, each one of them in itself is like killing a Brahmin, and Arjuna had done it all. To Ashwatthama, who was jealous of his honor, this treatment at the hands of Arjuna was worse than death. With his eyes bent on the ground, he dragged his steps away from the presence of the Pandavas and went away, far away from there. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.